Hi, my name is Terry, your boy Terry, and my username across the internet is Surpassing Google. And in this video, I'm going to be answering the question or discussing. Basically, it's a live stream. I just want you to have insight into my thought process and have the video unedited and real. And that's why it's a live stream. So the question is, how is the educational system in the Philippines? I live in the Philippines, and I don't know too much about education, but I have a general feel of what education is like based on what I've seen and that I've come across with, and Filipinos in general. You know, and again, I have something to contrast with because I know the education system in some other places, and that lays a basis for a good discussion about the educational system in the Philippines. Based on what I've seen, it is quite good from an educational standpoint. But education is a broad topic. According to me, education should involve things that are in the books as well as things that are not recorded in the books, things that have to do with life and exposure, tenets of human, virtues of human. Curriculums of the world today are not so modeled to enable you to evolve in your human. The systems is mostly so that you evolve in your brain, evolve in things like talent. So it doesn't really prepare you for real life. It's more about X plus Y equals Z. But most of this complex stuff, is simple. In the real world, it doesn't hold sway. Many things in the real world are simple, not too complex, and need simple solutions as well. Anyway, I'm digressing from the topic. From educational standpoint, in terms of what is in the books, I would say that the educational system in the Philippines is quite good. You know, I've seen students, and you know, uh, students are. I've seen the mode of how the exams are. The tangible pressure put on students to excel. I've seen students here during their exam days. I have some insight. How they write their exams. How um, oh my gosh, I'm digressing a bit. Uh, because I'm thinking of education system in some other places, compared to the Philippines. Maybe let's start with the expenses. It's quite expensive to school in the Philippines. Maybe not as expensive as it may be in the West. There are some opportunities for Filipinos to school at a cheaper price. But if you're a foreigner, it's quite expensive. Again, not as expensive as in the West, but expensive compared to some other countries. But there's value for your money. A student in the Philippines is they're quite knowledgeable. In the industry. There are some courses where they excel better. Where they where Philippines has expert knowledge in those industries. Industries like nursing. Um, you know, uh, in general, education is quite good. Exams are usually objective. I don't fancy that too much. I prefer where there is more a logical kind of exam and a more analytic kind of exam where you are able to evolve in your person, in your thinking, mental faculty in the course of an exam. But I noticed that most exams here are objective in nature, where you have to select answers Um, People do well. There are certain countries where you cannot scale an exam so easily. There's a tendency that you fail, like you repeat a class. But in the Philippines, people generally do well in their education because of how exams are posed. Um, Filipinos in general are, uh, I mean, in education, they really. And in conversations with students and graduates, you see that education has a strong influence on them. Their IQ and their level of analysis on subject matters. So I'd say that in general, I don't have too much insight, but I'll read some experiences I found on Quora. I'll paraphrase it. But I know what's missing. I know what's missing in the educational system, and it's something that affects the Philippines, regardless of the industry. I'll say that education here lacks exposure when it comes to tenets of real life. I doubt that a Filipino graduate can withstand pressure or dealing with life if he finds himself in another environment outside of the Philippines. I feel that the educational system here should have more exposure, excursions, to other nations. Life tenets should be integrated into the curriculums, not entirely books. College students here are more like high school students if you compare them to some other nations, and comparing myself, how I was when I was in college. I could cater to a company. When I was in college, we wrote a proposal, me and my friend, to uh, we found a tractor that had a bad engine, and we wrote a proposal to raise money to, restore the tractor to working condition, got a good engine, and started getting contracts in other locations. And we traveled days, to excavate land. And we had people that worked, they're elderly men, and we were sort of like boss, so then what was in the school in there? We had parties, were quite independent, the environment in which I schooled in and live pressures you to make your decision making, exposes you to the hustle of life. So you become a grinder. You have ambition. Your grit is there. These are some of the things lacking in your decision making, on the spot decision making. So the things I could do when I was even in the early stages of college, it may take someone that is elderly in the Philippines to do. The substance of the education is missing here, and you know exposure is needed in the curriculum. Some form of hassle, pressure, even if it's artificial. Travels, excursions, integration with other worlds. Maybe this is what is brought about by things like travel excursions or exchange students, stuff like that. So that maybe hostels. I don't know. Most times here, there's you have to go from home to your parents, and uh, but in some other places, it's not like that. You leave your parents to go to school. Now there is the positive of that, but there's also, but that's real life. We're not created to stay with our parents forever. Even the Bible said the man will leave his mother and his father and go out, stick to his wife, stuff like that. So these are some of the things missing in education, the educational system here. And you when it comes to competing with the world out there, the mentality is not solid enough for that, or prepared enough for that. You don't see students questioning matters. It's about, pleasing their lecturers, and the lecturers don't dare the students. We, when I was younger, we prepared for lecturers. They have a tough time with us, and they don't back out from these things. Here, when you're bold in general, you're questioned. It's seen as a sort of uh, out of the box, and it's countered. But that's a general outlook, and it affects education as well. It's about getting the grades, climbing the ranks career-wise for the lecturers. So that limits the educational system. It's about the books that have been written, and this becomes a standard. It's referenced, and the curriculum stay intact. There's the Filipino touch is not there, and Filipinos are so gifted, but you need to question the books. You need to innovate, experiment, improvise, and stir up new knowledge. Make what exists dynamic. Put the Filipino touch on what exists. Than just conform and stick to a standard that has existed for generations and may not even be applicable today or be applicable to the Filipino people in general. So the standards for education here is not so Filipino, which is something that can adjust and will give Filipino education standard more impact on a world level if adjusted. Filipinos are so gifted, really, so gifted, and by nature, but the grit is not there. This deeply rooted core is not there. And I've been with many graduates, and that's what's missing, really. When it comes to the grind, when it comes to invention, the self-sacrifice, the broader nature, and these are life tenets that will make you excel in the face of, regardless of location, in the face of any human, or any environment, then there will be a back out. And these are some things that can be instilled in education, using like extracurriculum or curricular activities, and very powerful stuff that when adjusted, it will affect a lot of things, a lot of sectors. Even the sports here, many students play sports, and the grind is not there. I've done, when I used to do tryouts in schools, I'm usually, taking. I wasn't very good in basketball, but I was defensive and athletic, and more than the physical aspect of the human, I was a grinder. These things are very obvious. I can take on three people, no shaking in my mind. I was, so, and even though I couldn't play basketball that good, I was always wanted, and when I end up joining teams, you'll see that the mentality of grind is not there. And these are things, most of the boys are mama's boys and stuff like that. These are the things that education can inculcate. And these are the very tiny elements that will help you excel on world level. So these are just some of the things needed in education systems here. I don't want to talk too much about the theory part. I think that the Filipinos are good. Just the lecturers need to be more challenged, by the students or by themselves. Lecturers themselves need exposure to life, and this will affect the educational standard positively. And the pupils need to be tasked, you know, challenged, and made turned into adults. You know, yes, and it's the standards need to shift towards creating innovators, dream builders than workers. Here, the challenge is to climb the career ladder. So most people don't turn out innovators, and these are things that can be channeled using an educational curriculum. The general feel of an educational system is, oh, go through with the 4 years in university and get a job. Either get a job abroad, do nursing so that you can travel abroad. So the real underlying intention to excel, to become the standard is not there, is missing. To innovate, to adjust the world, to care about the interest of the world at large. These things can be inculcated using an educational standard, but these are some of the things missing, and where worked on will instantly, take the educational system in the Philippines to another level. And not only the educational system, everything, sports. You'll hear the Philippines excelling on the world level and stuff like that. These are just some of the tiny things missing. The educational system here is good, but some of those things are missing. Not only in the Philippines, there are many other locations that have this missing as well. In terms of fees, it is quite expensive compared to some other, but the standard is good for the amount paid. It is not illogical for you, if you're abroad, to study in the Philippines. It's worth it, I would say so. There are many foreigners coming here, doing courses at a cheaper rate. And, in terms of education, books, it's worth it to come to the Philippines. So stream here. I didn't have too much insight because I've not schooled here. My intention was to read. Let me read some experiences or some answers on Quora on the subject. Maybe one gain more insight. This is from Joe Bergin. He says primary education is overcrowded and teachers are grossly underpaid. Morale, unsurprisingly, is reputed to be low. Secondary education is also overcrowded, but many student activities inspire spirit, and ambitious students from supportive families can gain from the secondary years. College, university is, as everywhere, uneven, but with some real gems. In the Philippines, people with any money send their kids to private schools. Um, Medical education available is often awesome. Nurses from this country are in huge demand both for their professional training and their reputation as true angels of mercy. The training schemes that specialize in technical education seem quite successful in getting ambitious young grads opportunities to travel, build savings, and come back with enough to invest to realize a good standard of living. So you see what I mentioned about the general mentality when it comes to schooling. Schooling in general is supposed to be part of the human evolution. It's part of life. The intention for schooling shouldn't necessarily be about security. And well, if it's about security, then solid security. Not necessarily, the most graduate, the average salary here is still $400, and most of that comes from the call center industry. So uh, that mentality has to be adjusted when it comes to education. Let me see if there's any other good resource. For the most part, most of the answers here refer to teachers' salary, overcrowded schools. But that's not the aspect I'm looking at it from. I'm looking at it from a broader aspect. Uh, it's not. Yes. So most of the comments here about shortage of teachers, overcrowded schools, and stuff like that. But I was tackling the standard of education in comparison to other nations. Anyway, let me stop here. I'm your boy Terry. If you have any questions, you can contact me. All my contacts is underneath this video, and um, yes, other resources as well that you can read on the subject matter is underneath this video. If you see any value in the things I've said, kindly subscribe to this YouTube channel and stay awesome. My username is Surpassing Google across the internet. Have an awesome day.